Hello, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another DMU live stream. My name is Ben, and today we are going to be talking to you about the UCAS application process and personal statements. So if you're sticking around for this stream, and hopefully you're looking to find out a little bit more about how those processes work, or you want a little bit of advice about your personal statement, hopefully this live stream is going to be for you. You'll be pleased to know that it isn't just myself that is going to be talking throughout this live stream. I have got a whole squad of colleagues who are going to be able to help answer all of these different questions for me. So I'm going to introduce them to you now. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Is it a Tuesday?
I think so.
Yeah. I've sort of lost track of days at this point.
The sunshine, you're working from home. It could have been any day since it started, couldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So just some quick introductions first of all. Jamie, hello.
Yeah, morning. Okay, so I'm Jamie. I've worked at DMU man and boy since I was about 12. I've worked at DMU for the last 17 years. I had enough trouble myself writing a personal statement back in the day, so I can talk about my own trials and tribulations and look forward to passing on some of my experience over the next hour or so.
Lovely stuff. And hello, Dal.
Hello, everyone. What's happening, people? My name's Dal. I've studied in various backgrounds, so mainly sports sociology, my master's in it, started a PhD in it, but we won't go down that route to see what happens there. But in my previous role, I used to mark personal statements, so I've got a good keen eye on what not to do and what to do in terms of when you're writing that.
Absolutely. Also joined by Tay. Hello, Tay.
Hi, good morning. My name is Tay. I'm a recent new member of the team, and I studied history at university. And I do have a bit of experience with, UCAS personal statement, because I did have to change mine last minute because I wanted to do another course. But if you have any questions or anything like that with history or personal statement, feel free to ask them.
Lovely stuff. And Nikila. Hello, Nikila.
Hi, I'm Nikila. So I recently joined School and College's recruitment team. I graduated in 2018. So in theory, my personal statement writing experience was relatively recent. So hopefully we'll be able to answer some of the questions that you might have and get you started on the process.
And last but certainly not least, it's Faye. Hello, Faye.
Morning. Yeah, I'm Faye. I've been in the team now for about 5 years. I graduated from university in modern foreign languages, so specifically Spanish and German. I think I wrote my personal statement about 100 times, so I'm sure we'll have some top tips for you.
Absolutely. So hopefully from today, if you do have any questions throughout, actually, make sure you do take those into the comments. We're keeping an eye on the comments in the Facebook group if you're joining us from Facebook. Also, if you are on YouTube, you can drop your comments in there and we'll make sure to pick those up as we go along. If you're watching on the website, you might not be able to see the comments box, but if you click on the link just on the video that says YouTube, it will take you to the YouTube page and you'll be able to actually access the comments from there. So like I say, if you do have any questions throughout, do make sure you stick them in there and we'll make sure that we answer them as we go. We also had quite a lot of questions to start with. So quite a lot of people submitted questions through the booking form on our website. So we'll try and make sure we answer those as we go, or if not, at the end. So I think first things first, I think we need to get a bit of an introduction as to what UCAS is. So if this is your first introduction into actually UCAS, you don't know anything about it, let's find out a little bit about that. So I'm going to hand over to Jamie to explain the initial parts of the UCAS process.
Thanks, Ben. So just before we broke up from working and had our lockdown at home, I was talking to a student about UCAS. I talked about the application, I talked about the points, I talked about the timeline. And at the end of the 5-minute conversation, the student then says, what's UCAS? So we thought we'd best go to the start and explain the concept of what UCAS is. So it stands for the University and College Admissions Service. And essentially all of you guys looking to put an undergraduate application, which is a first degree, into university, UCAS is a central platform that you apply for. So you put in one form, and that form then goes to all the different universities, all the different courses you want to do. So it's a central hub. You apply through them. They then pass your application through to the different universities. They then make their offers and pass that back through UCAS. So UCAS is kind of the intermediary that will be between you and the universities themselves. It's also a really useful source of resource. There's tips on researching, there's guide for parents, guides for students, there's a load of material to help you get through this phase of the research and planning process as well. And on there, you've got profiles of every single university in the country. So 250 plus institutions and 50,000 plus different courses. You can look at the grades, read the description, click on a link, go through to the university website. Essentially, it's your central hub of all things university application. So if you wanted to have a look and see what course portfolio DMU's got, of course, you can go straight to our website and browse, but you can also see all of our courses listed in detail on UCAS and compare and contrast different products from different institutions. And when you apply, UCAS is the process you'll apply through. When you get your offers, UCAS is the process they'll come through there. And if you want to check your status any point in between, again, UCAS is the platform that you will use. So when you first go on, it will seem unfamiliar. You'll think, what do I do here? By the time you get to starting university, either this September or more likely for you guys next September, you'll know everything about UCAS like the back of your hand. Back to yourself, Ben.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So that gives you a really good sort of summary about what UCAS is. So if you've never visited the UCAS website before, that's probably a really good place to start, actually, because that's going to be a wealth of resources that you can use. What I really quickly want to just show people, because I have prepared some graphics, it's like Blue Peter all over again, is the UCAS timeline. So you can see all of our little icons up there. There we go, that's better. So the UCAS timeline in terms of where everybody's kind of sitting right now. So if you are in year 12 at the minute, and you're sort of going through that process of your first year of your A-levels, you're going to be at the very start of your timeline. Hopefully everybody can read that. It's a little bit small. Maybe I'll make it bigger. There we go. So you're at the start of that sort of timeline. So you're going to be doing that research. You're going to be looking into those different universities. You're going to be looking at those different courses. Obviously, in other circumstances, you might be going to open days, but obviously you can try and do some of that supplementary research through the university websites. That's going to be the start of your actual application process. So this is really the bulk of you finding out where you want to go and what course it is you want to do. When you get into year 13, so when you start in year 13, that is when your cycle opens. So that's when you're actually able to actually log into UCAS and actually start making those applications. Now, if you're looking to go for some of those more sort of competitive courses, things like medicine or veterinary science, or if you're looking to go to somewhere like Oxford or Cambridge, your UCAS deadline is really early on. So it's actually October 15th. So you need to make sure that if you're thinking of going down that particular route, you actually get your application in pretty early. For everyone else looking to apply for any of the courses or any other university across the country, the actual UCAS deadline is January 15th. However, generally, your colleges, if you're at college at the minute, they'll ask for that application in a little bit earlier because that gives them time, your teachers and your tutors, gives them a little bit of time to just add your predicted grades and add any sort of teacher references or any additional documentation they need to add to your application. So they'll normally set an internal deadline within the college that happens to normally be before Christmas. So sort of early December is normally around the average time that that colleges want it. So make sure when you get into year 13 that you're aware of when that deadline is. You then should get all your offers back from those universities in sort of March time. So you'll have all of your offers back from there. And then you'll be able to make a decision based on those offers by May as to where you're going to be going. So this will be your firm and your insurance choices, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Obviously, then it will come to results day after you've finished everything in year 13. And then hopefully, all being well, you've got into your firm choice and you're starting university in the September term. So that's why it's very important that we just highlight where everybody is in that cycle and actually when your kind of key deadlines are. And this will become very important as we go through that sort of whole process and we talk more about how that kind of UCAS process works. So flip back to here. And there we are. So I've given you a little bit of a timeline and Jamie has kindly talked a little bit about how UCAS kind of works. Dal, would you like to run us through the sort of UCAS application process, the key important parts of that?
No, I wouldn't, Ben. No. Okay, so you would have heard Jamie talk about an application process in regards to UCAS, and it's very similar in regards to creating a job application for a job that you might want to go to. So what you do, you create yourselves an account through UCAS, and you do that by going onto their website. So it's www.ucas.com/apply. But I'm sure if you just go into Google, hit in UCAS application, you'll be sure to find the link on where to go. You'll be asked to make a username and a password. Like all of the things, please do keep this safe because every time you log in to your UCAS application, you will need to put those credentials in. Your school will then give you a buzzword, which is then unique to your school or to your college. Okay, so that will be able to identify what school or college that you're from. If you're applying independently, you will not need to put in a buzzword. You then get the opportunity then to start making your choices. As Jamie said, there's over 250 institutions and over 50,000 courses. So we cannot stress enough the importance of doing good research, because you now have to then narrow that down to 5 choices. Okay, the same application is then sent to all of those 5 university choices that you make. So you do not make individual applications based on what course or what university you want to go to. There is a charge attributed to making a UCAS application. It's £20 if you make 1 choice or £25 if you make multiple choices. We would always advise you guys to make multiple choices just to keep your options open. And just in case you do not get your preferred choice, your desired choice to go to university, you still have a lot of options in regards to what other choices that you can make. When we then start to look at the application form into a bit more detail, there are then 6 sections that you have to complete. The first section is very self-explanatory, which is your personal details. So your name, your email address, your ethnicity, your origin, your nationality. You don't have to put them all in there. You'll see red asterisks to the ones that are compulsory. You then have to give your university choices. Now, this choice is not in order of preference, i.e. for choice number 1, I'm going to put my preferred choice, which is DMU. You just put all the different choices down that you are interested in and going to. You will then put in your academic qualifications. Even if you haven't finished your application, your qualification, you still put those qualifications onto the website. And then you start to go onto your paid employment history and also stuff that you may have done voluntarily as well. Your tutors then would then provide you with a reference just to make sure we haven't told any porkies in our application. And then we will go on to the bane of your life, which is your personal statement. I can guarantee you this will become the part that you'll end up pulling your hair out, and the reasons as to why that might be, I'm going to pass over to my colleague Tay in a second, who will talk to you about the different parts of the personal statement.
Perfect. Thank you so much there, Dow. A quick question that we had before the stream started, actually, before we hand over to personal statements, is so a little something to do with UCAS points. So what UCAS points mean? Does anybody want to just quickly jump in and sort of explain those a little bit?
I'll do it. So UCAS points, when you look at your courses or when you're looking at a course on UCAS, you will see UCAS points. Depending on the qualification that you guys are doing, it will all attribute to points. If you have a look at your screen now, if you're doing A-levels and you look at the grading criteria, you will see that if you receive a B grade, you will achieve 40 points. Now, let's just say the course that you guys want to go on to is 120 points. I'm absolutely poor at maths, so I'm going to keep this very simple. And you're doing 3 A-levels, you know that if you get 3 Bs, you will achieve the right amount of points to go on to that course. Some university courses might have grades listed, i.e. you need to achieve BBC, but they all correlate to UCAS points. You can have a mixture of both, so you can do BTECs and A-levels. And what we do, we take the points from the A-levels, we take the points from the BTECs, add those together, and then we'll see whether you meet the entry criteria. If your school also does the extended project qualification, that is also equivalent or attributes UCAS points as well, and that would all go towards the total. Put very simply, whatever that total is you see on your course, you just need to achieve that from the different types of qualifications you're getting, and your teachers can help you in order to understand how much points you're on track to gain from completing that qualification.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that. And thank you very much for submitting that question, Morgan. I think it's worth knowing as well, there are quite a lot of different types of qualifications, there's quite a lot of different types of BTECs and that sort of thing. So if you're not quite sure what your type of qualification is, obviously ask your college. And then the UCAS website has got a points calculator that has saved my bacon on numerous occasions when I've not been sure about how many points a certain qualification's worth. So do have a look on the UCAS website again, because there's a points calculator on there that's really, really useful.
And one thing just to quickly add, sorry. bear in mind that we'll also have a lot of flexibility as well. So if you want to do pharmacy and you look and see it's 128 UCAS points, which is going to be an ABB, don't assume that that's kind of like a hard cutoff. If you've got slightly less than that, most courses will still consider you. So don't feel you have to be spot on. You're just talking ballpark. And also we know that this year a lot of people's A-levels and BTECs have been interrupted halfway through by the COVID-19 situation we're currently in. And that means that next year's cycle will have even more flexibility than usual, because we know that all of you guys have gone through the challenges of 3 or 4 months gap in the middle of your studies. So please don't panic about the grades. There'll be lots of flexibility. There always is lots of flexibility, but this year there'll be additional flexibility because of the situation that we know is going on.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And again, really sorry, Tay, just before we do move on to talking about personal statements, we have had a question come through from YouTube. Somebody has said, what can you do if you want a first generation university applicant?
Yeah, I can answer that. First of all, you do not need to worry if you are a first generation university applicant. I was the first one in my family as well, to go to university. And it is a bit scary because people, you don't have that same kind of experience, and people in your family of going to that university having gone through that same process as you would now. So first of all, not to worry. There is a lot of help with the colleges and schools that you do go to. So for me, schools, my college was so helpful in order for me to get those applications in. Whenever I was stuck, I would go to the teachers and ask them, how I need to go through. And UCAS does have a very good, a step-by-step process as how you can go about with the application. And if you don't know how to go about that as well, definitely ask your friends as well, because they're going through the same thing as you. So don't worry about too much, because all the information and help is there, and you can find it on UCAS, and your colleges will be there too.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Tay. Whilst we have got you on the full screen, do you want to talk a little bit about personal statements, talk about that part of the application process?
Yes. So personal statements is kind of one of the main bits on the UCAS application. This is the opportunity where you can really sell yourself. So it's like it's less than a page, about 4,000 characters, I believe, and 47 lines. Yes, 47 lines. To write about why you're interested at the course that you want to do. And remember, as Dal said, remember it's going to all the 5 universities that you have selected. So you have to be really careful. You can't say I want to go to De Montfort University and study art and design because it has opportunities like DMU Global. I mean, you can't say let's make sure that it's like catered to the course, and you're not saying specific universities, because it is going to all of them separately, and it's opportunity to sell yourself. In this, you can include things that are very different about you, something you've done. You can include things, your extracurricular activities, if you've done like programs, and anything that makes you interesting, and anything that's going to make you stand out. Because remember, everybody is going to be writing those personal statements, and universities would be looking at what makes you different from the crowd, and and what it motivates you to do that subject, why you're interested in that subject. They want to see if you're the right person to do that course, and whether you are going to university for the next 3 years, and the universities want to make sure that we pick the right person as well.
Thank you very much, Tay. Jamie, I think if we can jump over to yourself very quickly and talk a little bit about the sort of structure of a personal statement.
Of course you can. Yeah, great advice from Tay there. When I was an applicant all those years ago, I did none of those things. I put it off, left it to the last minute. I tried to apply to 2 completely different courses because I couldn't decide if I wanted to do history or English. So I thought, and business as well, history, English and business in one application form. And I had to try and write one personal statement, got myself in a complete tangle. Like I said, left it to the last minute. So the 2 top tips on me are: 1, don't put it off, get started early. And 2, do try and narrow those choices down. Otherwise, you'll find yourself trying to put lots and lots of conflicting info into one document, which will confuse you, confuse your teachers, and really confuse the uni when they come to read it. So some structure. So there's no hard and fast rule with how you have to structure it. You can write it however you want to do it. But if you break it down in your mind to say, right, now I'm going to write about this, then move on to that, then move on to this, it makes it easier to make sure you're ticking all the boxes, and make it easier to make sure you're not missing anything crucial out. So the first bit, the probably most important bit, is the first paragraph. You need to generate an engaging first opening paragraph. Oh, here we are. Look at this. Look, like you planned it. So the first paragraph is going to engage. It's going to grab the attention. These tutors reading these personal statements, they might read hundreds of other people's personal statements. So if your statement is okay, but a bit bland, not very individual, doesn't jump out from the page, then it won't necessarily grab the attention of the reader. So an engaging, proactive, memorable first line is important. The next step and the key link between yourself and the person who's reading the form is the course. You're applying for the course, you're passionate about it, the tutor teaches on it, they're also passionate about it. You want a lot of your statement to link on the course area. You don't know who's going to read it. They could be old, young, male, female, they could have a sense of humor, they could be dead serious, but you know they're going to have a passion for the course. That's the place to start. Explain your research process. Why do you want to do the course? What's motivated you about it? Was it something you did in your A-levels? Was it something you did in your work experience? Does your mother do that job? Does your father know someone who does that job and who did that course? Just talk about your reasons and then link it in to the study you're doing now. Link it into your A-levels. Link it into your BTEC. What have you done in that BTEC that prepares you for that degree you want to do? What skills have you gained? The next thing you want to do is talk about your suitability. So you've talked about why you want to do the course, then you've got to identify all the different things that you've done, bringing in your work experience, bringing experience from your extended project, your extension from your hobbies. Anything that you've done gives you relevant experience to the course. And then the final paragraph is your conclusion that pulls it all together, that summarizes and grabs the attention. One thing to point out here is the extracurricular activities. They're the easiest thing to write about. If you play football or cricket or you're passionate in dance or performing arts, you're going to find it really easy to write loads about that. Some people's statements get taken over by the fun stuff because they're easiest to write about, and you don't spend enough time talking about the serious stuff. And the thing that links it all together, you want to link the course you want to do with the experience that you've got, and the skills gained is the way that you link it together. So you want to talk about how you want to do a course in hospitality management, you work part-time in a hotel, and that develop your skills in customer service, relationship management, timekeeping, all those types of things. So talk about what you did, what skills it gained you, and then link that back to the course. But don't be too rigid with these structures. Just make sure that when you're pulling it all together, you're making sure you're thinking about these different things and not missing out any one of these aspects. But the experience, academic, work, voluntary, sports, hobbies, they're the things you want to talk about, what you did, what skills you gained from it, and then link that back to your subject of choice you've mentioned at the start.
Jamie, let's bring everybody else back in. There we are. Thank you for that. And I think that is quite a big question that a lot of students are having at the minute is actually how to structure that personal statement and all the things they need to include. We have just had a question from YouTube, and we had some of the questions submitted before we went live on the live stream through our booking form. And it was quite a common question that was popping up with the current situation. It was, what can I do to improve my personal statement whilst in this lockdown? So any advice on that while we're here?
I can have a go. Using my my experience in marking personal statements, something I just really want to pick up on what Jamie was saying. We, as personal tutors, when you're marking personal statements, you are literally marking hundreds and hundreds of different personal statements. And you'll be quite surprised at how many of them are borderline identical. So I don't believe there's any two students that are the same. So when we're reading these personalized statements, which should be personal to the individual, I don't understand how then we're getting carbon copies of each statement. And I'll be completely honest with you guys, and I'll let you in on a little secret. We get bored. We're human beings just like you guys. If you guys were given the task of reading hundreds and hundreds of different statements, I guarantee you, if you're reading statement after statement, which starts just like, for as long as I can remember, I've always been passionate about nursing, I guarantee you, once you've read the third or the fourth one, you're going to want to switch off. So how do we improve? And I just want to pick up on what Jamie said right at the start in regards to engaging opening paragraph. Because for me, that is a great way for you guys to make a big difference in setting the tone and the standard for your work. And I'll give you an example. A lot of students will approach their personal statement by saying, for as long as I can remember, I wanted to study in. I've always been interested in or fascinated by business management. But how many students would actually take a step back and start by giving a very broad definition of what their field means to them. And I'll give you an example. So for me, sports sociology, sociology is the study of people within a society, within the context of sport. And then what that allows you to do is jump straight into where you got that piece of information from. So for me, that became apparent when I did my A-levels. So then that gives me a great leap and a great link to jump straight in to my education. So we have these three types of experiences, which I believe we can categorize all areas of our lives. And that is academic, that is employability, and that is social. So when you start off with a great opening sentence or a great opening structure like so, it gives you the opportunity to jump into one of those categories. Okay, so you've told me this is what you know about it. Okay, so where did you get that information from? And then what you'll start to see is the body of your work will start to develop and it will start to flow, and you'll be able to start to follow some sort of order and really emphasize on the key skills that you guys have got. And it's not important you chuck all of those key skills into a sentence, because again, that's a common mistake that students make. They put all their, I'm great at communicating, I'm great at problem solving, I'm great at working in a team. What we want to do is try and dissect those, take those out of that one crammed sentence, give an example of where they've come from, and refer back to those three types of experience. So refer back to your academic stuff. I developed my analytical nature there. When I was working during my employment history, I developed my ability to work within a team. Within my social settings, I played some sports. So I developed how to work within a team and take on board other people's opinions and ideas. So there's a lot of ways we can attempt it. I hope that information hasn't just gone straight over your head, guys.
No, that was some really good advice. Thank you, Dal. Does anybody else have anything they want to add on to that, or add on to what Dal has just said?
I think the thing that's harder to get is the work experience. You'd normally work over the summer, volunteer over the summer, build up your skill sets. That might be trickier this year. What you can do is some of the academic research, some of the readings, some of the wider context, some of the sort of underpinning academic work that will lead into a degree. So do genuinely spend the time doing that. And then it might mean you change the tone of a statement slightly away from the experience you would have got and slightly more into the academic passion for the course. But if you follow the tips that Dal's got and drop in those skills, but in individual context, not in one big block, then you'll definitely go fine. And don't panic about the lack of experience opportunities in the summer, because everybody else is going to be in the same boat. And again, we know the situation, so we're going to be a lot more open-minded and flexible looking at that element of things, just like the UCAS points compared to a normal year, which we're certainly not in.
Absolutely. And just to tie into what you guys have just said as well, I mean, things like work experience are always quite difficult for certain courses at the best time anyway. So I think the universities are likely to be slightly more lenient with the fact that obviously that experience is harder to get, but there's a lot of skills that you can develop from home. And if anything, actually, this is a really good time. If there's a skill that you want to learn, is just go out there and just try it. You know, there's so many services online that you can use to start developing new skills. If you know you're interested in something, or you know you want to go down that route, start looking for some of those services online. I'm trying to think of an example, something like Skillshare, for instance. There's got so many different sort of videos and tutorials in doing things like, you know, photography or graphic design or whatever. So there's ways of gaining some of those skills using your own initiative, off your own back, and just kind of going out there and just pursuing those as additional things that you can do. So don't feel like you're limited because you're at home. Use some of those resources you've got available, and use some of this extra time that you've got actually to maybe learn a new skill that way. And these are things that, again, you can talk about and include on your statement. Something else I do want to just quickly mention as well, because we had another question come through before the live stream, was actually to do with things like work experience. Obviously, we've mentioned that at the minute we can't do an awful lot with work experience. But is there anything else that students can do that will give them that advantage in their personal statement or their interviews outside of what we've already mentioned? Oh, there we go, Faye.
I think just outside of work experience, just doing wider reading around your course as well. Doing that further research just shows even more so that you're interested in what you want to study at university, and that evidences that to the admissions tutors who are going to read it. And I think as well, just don't be afraid to sing your own praises. I think it can be really difficult for some people to talk about, oh yeah, I'm great at this and I'm great at that, and that might feel really, really cringy. But that's what you need to do. We want to hear what you're good at, and yeah, shine through that personal statement, really.
Absolutely. Nikita, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, so I was on LinkedIn. So if you've not got a LinkedIn LinkedIn. So it's an online platform where businesses and people basically use it to not just for looking for jobs, but just get an idea of what the career itself entails. So if, for instance, you're doing a career in business management, as we said earlier, business management people who are currently working in the role, see what they're up to, see what their interests are, so that you can actually appreciate what everybody who is in that industry is getting up to. And the other thing that I noticed was on there, I actually saw that there are a couple of companies who are doing sort of virtual work experience days. So ordinarily they'd obviously offer internships and placement opportunities. Obviously at the minute, with everything going on at the moment, they're appreciative of the fact that that's possible. So some companies are actually offering students options to apply for these virtual experiences so that they can actually get the experience as best as they can from home. And by being proactive and looking for these opportunities, you're going to demonstrate to the universities that you are actually really passionate about the career, you're passionate about the subjects, and that you are the type of student who will actually go above and beyond to try and get that extra research in and just really get that across to them.
Thank you very much. Again, we're getting quite a lot of comments come through from this, and we had quite a lot of questions beforehand, so hopefully we're answering some of those questions for you there. One question that we had come through from YouTube is, should you write about extracurricular activities that you used in maybe previous years, so year 11, year 10 and year 9? What advice would you give for those sort of students?
Year 11's okay. I think you're just going to be careful how far you go back. You know, if you're talking about cycling proficiency and being pupil of the year in year 4, you're probably stretching it. But if you're talking about something you did during your GCSE, then that's fine. You know, just sort of be sensible as to how far back you go. I wouldn't go much further back than year 10 without it starting to lose relevance. You know, so try and focus on the current and the more relevant if you can. But if you feel you need to dip into some wider material, but it's there. But don't go way back when.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Last couple of questions I think we've had from YouTube. Lara said, how would you talk about wider reading and personal statements? I think, Faye, you touched on that very, very briefly there, just sort of highlighting some of those key areas of research that you've done. I think if you can talk about all those kind of additional articles that you've read online, again, the internet's a fantastic resource for this sort of thing. So as I say, adding to what Faye mentioned before, it's always nice to see that you are looking at some of the reading, looking at some of the research. It demonstrates to a university that you've actually looked at what the course is. You've not just had a flick through the prospectus and gone, oh, okay, I'll do history. You actually know what the subject area is going to be about. So you've actually looked at that and gone, okay, I'll look into what this particular topic is. But on a personal statement, they're not looking for you to recite everything that you're going to be studying. Remember, you're going to university to actually learn those topics. So mention it, talk about that you've got an interest in it, mention some of the reading that you've done, but you don't need to explain that you know everything, because like I say, that's what you're going there to study. And then last question, I can just answer very, very quickly. Can you add podcasts to personal statement about the course? For a lot of courses, I would say so, particularly if it's your way of maybe doing some research or your way of kind of expressing yourself with that particular topic. So I think podcasts are a fantastic medium. Okay, I think we've covered pretty much everything that I can think of for the question side of things for the personal statement. Does anybody else have anything else they want to add for the personal statement, with it being a massive part of the application?
Shall we do some do's and don'ts on it?
I think so. I think that sounds like a great idea. So, Nicola, I believe you are looking at the do's and don'ts for us today.
Yep.
There you are.
So with your personal statement, I would say the hardest thing that I personally found was initially putting pen to paper. I really struggled when you're sitting there looking at a piece of paper and you're trying to think of everything to say. It is so intimidating to start with that first sentence. So my advice would be, don't start with the first sentence. Start with a mind map, start to plan out your ideas, plan out. So if you've got each section, maybe have that coming off the main area of your mind map and start to plan off there. It's easier sometimes to work with a mind map first and then try and transfer that into a Word document than it is to try and write that first initial sentence. So I think what I did is I wrote several drafts. I started with a mind map. I then put that into my first draft. I then moved it around and I played with it. I played on the wording. But initially, what I would say, content, then focus on the wording. Be prepared to write it several times. You're going to have so many different drafts. I actually, before this live stream, managed to find all the different drafts that I had for my personal statement. And you would not believe the number of times that I changed the statement. But I would say, save each draft in a different format. So then that way you've got the opportunity to look back on different drafts and say, actually, no, I preferred that paragraph, or maybe I prefer how I worded this. By having each different draft, you're going to be able to see all the progress that you've made and the changes that you did, and it will feel more rewarding to look back and say, actually have made more progress than I thought I did. I know Jamie mentioned earlier, so we have a bit of advice called the ABC method. So that is activity, benefit, and then cost. So what that means is, rather than just listing all the traits that you have, if you mention a particular activity that you do, so for instance, you do a particular sport, explain how that was beneficial to you. So as we said earlier, it can show teamwork and taking on other people's ideas, and then link that back to your course, link it how it's relevant to your degree, because we don't just want to see what you've developed, we want to see how you know that that's going to be beneficial to your course and to your studies and to your experience at university. Don't be afraid to ask for feedback. There's always people you can go to, whether that's your parent or your personal tutors or your subject teachers, or you've got friends that you want to go to. I know for myself, I went to my tutor, my former tutor at the time. She was really helpful with it. And I also went to my friends, so one of my best friends, the two of us, we would sit in the library and we would sit for half an hour, write some stuff on our personal statements, and then after a while we'd swap personal statements over and we'd look each other's over and see what we think was good, what we think maybe they could have worked better on. Sometimes when you're so fixated on this document, you might think it's your masterpiece and the best thing that you've ever written. It's difficult to take a step back and actually look at things like grammar mistakes, spelling mistakes, because you're just so focused on what it should say. By having a peer come and have a look at it for you, sometimes you are actually picking up on things that you necessarily wouldn't have noticed. As we've said previously, make sure you have a look at the UCAS website for tips and advice on how to structure your personal statement. There's loads of advice on there. They've got, I think they have a personal statement guide on there to help you structure your personal statement. And as we said, so what we would recommend, so your personal statement, you can copy and paste it from a Word document directly into the UCAS form. We'd recommend writing it on like a Word document, or maybe using something like Grammarly first, just to make sure that you've got rid of any spelling mistakes, any grammar mistakes, and that way you can edit it easier as well, because sometimes if UCAS crashes, you'll lose any work that you've done already, and that would obviously be a nightmare. Make sure you're keeping everything that you're saying relevant. Every point that you make, every sentence that you make should value to what you're saying, and link back to the course, link back to the university, link back to who you are. And remember, you're there to sell yourself. As we've said before, it can be quite difficult. It can seem a bit cringy just talking about yourself, but at the end of the day, that university in theory has no other information on you other than your personal statement. That is the best place for you to try and get across to them why you're perfect for that degree, and make sure it's a positive one. It should be reflective of your personality, of who you are, and stick to language that you're comfortable with. Don't be using a thesaurus for every other word so that you don't even understand what it means anymore. At the end of the day, it's there for you to also show that you are able to write in a formal document. You're there to show that you can write fluidly and can actually structure an essay of types together, because remember, when you're at university, these you're going to be using all the time. So just the structure and showing that you are able to write a good piece of work will be beneficial for you. I think we're going to hand over to Ben now, who's going to go over some personal statement don'ts.
We are indeed. Hello, thank you very much. So if I flick onto this screen just here, there we are. We've got some do's from Nicola, thank you very much. And then we've got some don'ts. So again, just a few things you just need to be aware of when you are actually doing your applications. We've obviously talked about quite a lot today, and the applications are, like I say, a big part of this sort of actual application to university. So it's always worth just being aware of all these different things. I think, as said before, don't be afraid to start a little bit early and just draft and redraft and just get people to actually look over that application, just so that any of these little things that you might have missed out, they're picked up on at some stage of the application. And don't do what I did and leave it until literally the week before Christmas before submitting your application. My tutors hated me. So that would be my first piece of advice there. The other thing is very tempting, with a lot of resources available online as well, to use some of the online templates that are available for your personal statements. If you can avoid those, this is supposed to be a personal statement. It is supposed to be a reflection of you as an individual. It needs to sound like you, and it needs to be the very essence of you as an individual. So avoid using things like online templates and stuff like that will kind of, I guess, give you a lot of the answers. But equally, don't copy from somebody else. It is technically plagiarism, so you should be obviously aware of that from things like your essays and stuff like that. And again, that's reflected at university as well. So just avoid copying from somebody else, because again, there's a chance that you could get caught out that way. Don't lie or exaggerate on your application, so don't make stuff up. Obviously, again, this needs to be a reflection of you as an individual. If you get to a stage where you get to an interview or a conversation with an academic, they may ask you about things that you've done in your personal statement, and obviously you don't want to be tripped up that way. So make sure that it is as close to the best representation of you as an individual as you possibly can. Whilst it is, again, a personal statement, it is a reflection of you, it needs to remain quite formal. Treat it like a job application. So when you start actually applying for jobs, there'll very often be a personal statement type text box on the application, and it will be very, very similar to this. And in the same way that you would treat that as a very sort of formal application, you need to treat this very seriously and like a formal application. Again, don't be afraid to talk about your sort of hobbies and things that you enjoy. You're allowed to include things like that, as we've mentioned, but you just need to make sure that you're doing it in a way that, again, is quite formal and it's quite professional, so that when somebody at the university reads it, again, they're getting a good example of you as an individual. I like a good cliche, but as Dal mentioned before, avoid using them. You know, the amount of times that we have literally read, I've wanted to be a nurse since I was young, or, you know, I've wanted to be a midwife or a doctor or whatever. They come up so often, so you need to make sure that you are being original as possible, and having those big impacts on the at the top of your application, as Dal mentioned before, are just going to make it sort of way more interesting to read for the person on the other end that is reading them. And also, don't rely on the spell check. So the spell check in Microsoft Word, as we know, is very, very easy to trick. You know, they're very easy to trick up on some of the sort of more grammar mistakes and that sort of thing. So just make sure that you are getting somebody to go over and draft and redraft and look at all those different things, so they're able to pick up any of the sort of little niggles to there. And finally, something that somebody mentioned before as well was trying not to make it specific to one institution. Somebody will have mentioned earlier that your personal statement that you submit on your UCAS application, it is just the one personal statement that goes to all 5 of your university choices. So when you put your 5 application choices down on your UCAS application, it is the same personal statement that will go to all 5. So if you on your personal statement say, I would like to go to DMU because, but you've also applied to, let's say, I don't know, Dundee and Nottingham, they will read the same application. So you need to make sure that it isn't specific to those particular institutions or to one institution. Okay. Right. I'm going to bring everybody back into the call. There we are. Hello, everyone. Does anybody have any additional sort of hints or tips or any do's or don'ts that we haven't mentioned at this stage?
I think a couple of people might have mentioned about if they want to apply to more than one subject, which we did touch upon before slightly.
Yeah.
If sometimes at university you can put really, really different subjects together. I had a friend who was studying German and chemistry, so quite different. And some places that would be okay to do that, but you might not be able to find 5 universities that allow you to put that together. So it's coming across with that mix. What do you really, really want to do? What is your preferred course? Sometimes people worry that they won't get onto the course, that it's competitive even, and they might say, okay, well, I'll make an application to a couple of different courses. I'm going to make it my personal statement a little bit vague. So I might just talk about the health sciences generally, as opposed to applying to both nursing and midwifery. But at that point, sometimes the admissions tutor can get a little bit confused, and they might start thinking that they're not sure that you know what you want to do, even though you do know. You're just trying to broaden your options as well. So I think pick the subject. It might be that sometimes it is a similar course and they just have slightly different names at universities, and that happens too. But just really take the time to do that research. I actually wrote a couple of personal statements. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. One was for psychology, one was for modern languages. And actually writing that personal statement made me realise what my passion actually led towards, and also what could be more of a hobby, what could be something I could read more about in my own time as well. So yeah, pass you back over to Ben.
I think that's a good point, actually, because I think both myself and Jamie also had the same sort of problem. We weren't quite sure what we wanted to study when it came to actually writing our personal statements. You know, I was torn between going down the computing route or going down the sort of media and journalism route. I think, Jamie, you said similar sort of thing about your business courses.
If I'm honest, in year 12, I didn't really have much of an idea. By the spring of year 12, I remember I sat in a talk, but sort of face-to-face version of this essentially, and thought, oh my God, I've got no idea what I want to do. I knew I wanted to go. No one in the family had gone to uni, but I knew I fancied it. but I did 3 A-levels that were totally different because I didn't know what to do even then. And it was really hard. And I genuinely was fearful of committing to one area. So I split my options up across the 2 and then ended up writing this really, really complicated personal statement. So if you are torn with what to do just do the research, read the prospectuses, go online, talk to people like us. You can get in touch with the university and ask some questions, but just spend the time thinking about it. But if you can narrow it down to one area, it really, really helps and make it a much, much, much easier process to go through if you have focused those courses down to one ballpark area.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I was just like to say, if you are stuck between 2 subjects, for example, for me, it was English and history. I did actually write 2 separate personal statements. So if I did wanted to change my mind at the end minute, I had those 2 personal statements, and, it wouldn't be me doing a last minute personal statement, just changing everything to history or changing everything to English. So sometimes it might be a good idea to, like Nikki said, have different personal statements suited to whichever course that you want to do.
Absolutely. So we've had a couple of questions come through on YouTube. Just want to see if we can touch on a few of those. We've had, what attitude do teachers have towards students watching YouTube videos on things relating to the course? So I think this ties in a little bit to what we were talking about, again, about that sort of wider reading that students can do at the moment. Does anybody have some sort of opinions on this?
There's no problem at all with YouTube, really. I mean, while YouTube gets a bit of a name for being sort of gimmicky and marketing, in reality, there's a lot of decent content on YouTube. So it doesn't really matter where the content comes from. If you find it useful and you think it helps and you find it clarifies your research process, then go for it. You don't necessarily have to name check it as being on YouTube. You can just name check it as a resource more specifically. But yeah, no reason not to do at all, especially now, given you can't do so much primary first-hand research. Any digital platforms are completely fair game and worth looking on in terms of like moving yourself forward down the process. So yeah, no worries at all.
Yeah, and I think this ties into some of the fears that some students were having with regards to things like the current lockdown situation and how they do that additional sort of work experience or that additional sort of wider reading. So yeah, like we said before, use as many online resources as possible, including something like YouTube and including things like podcasts, perhaps. Just go out there and just see what is on offer, because again, the internet has quite a lot available to you if there's new things that you want to learn. Touching more broadly on again, sort of course specific stuff, we've already mentioned a little bit about this, but I think it is always very good if you are going to be kind of course specific, is you do have a look at what the university is going to cover over those sort of 3 years. So again, that maybe what areas to kind of go into and what areas you're particularly interested in. So if there's a particular topic that maybe comes up in your sort of 2nd or 3rd year that you're really interested in, you can highlight that as maybe a particular course of interest. I don't know if anybody else has got anything they want to sort of add on to that.
Not mentioning the course is a bit like applying for a job and not mentioning the job in the application form. The course is what you're applying for. So you really, really do have to try and get down to that level of detail, matching your experience, your skills, your passion, your research to the course you applied for. So if you ask this question because you're thinking, I have no idea what course to do, then use the next 6 months to narrow down that research and find the course, then write the statement off the back of that. But really, it's quite hard to do it just generically without having the course as the key link to come back to.
Absolutely. Okay, I think we've got a couple more topics that we want to cover just before we get to the end. There are still a couple of questions that we do want to go through, but we'll perhaps leave those until a little bit later. But I think we're going to talk about what happens after the application has been submitted. So once you have chosen your 5 subjects, once you have completed that personal statement, which we've talked an awful lot about over the last hour, once you've completed all of that, it's gone through your teachers, they've submitted all the relevant documentation, and it's gone to those 5 universities. What happens after that? So I briefly touched on it earlier when I talked very briefly about that sort of timeline, but I think I'm going to jump over to Faye to talk a little bit about what happens next.
Yeah, so hopefully not absolute panic. Did I do the right thing? Have I applied to the right course? So hopefully you've done all your research and finally you hit that send button and brilliant. Just take a moment to just breathe, relax. You've done your personal statement. Fantastic. Send it off. Pay your £25 as well, obviously have that in your bank account to be able to send off your UCAS application. So what happens next is that UCAS sends that copy to the chosen universities. Again, they have no idea who you've applied to. They don't know if they are your first choice or if they're your last choice as well. Universities will then have a look at your application, they'll assess it, it'll go through the different admissions tutors. Usually it is quite a, we do really look into applications before making a decision as to whether to decline an application, for example. It might be that we look at your application and that is actually the next step to request a portfolio from you. So if you're doing something art and design based, we may invite you to an interview. It might be you don't have to submit a portfolio, but we might, if it's not art and design based, for example, but you still might be invited to an interview, particularly if it's a very, very skilled course. So things like nursing, midwifery, anything kind of allied health related, we've got to make sure that you have got the right skills. And that really, it's what you think it is, that you haven't got it wrong, and that you're definitely prepared for that kind of career. So we'll either make you an offer, we'll either invite you to an interview, for example, but whatever happens, your UCAS track will be updated and you will get correspondence from the university. Now, some of the different offers that you might get a conditional offer. So yes, we loved your application, but there are conditions that come with that. So it might be that it's dependent on the grades that you get. So we'll say, yes, you can come in, but only if you get X number of UCAS points. The other one might be unconditional offer. So perhaps you've already done your exams. It might be people returning to education, or it might just be that you've shown high achievement, that you're set to do really, really well as part of your exams. We already think that you would be a great addition to the university, so we may offer you an unconditional offer. It's something that's offered at lots and lots of universities, not just at De Montfort University as well. So have a look at if that really is for you. So if an unconditional offer is for the university that you want to go to, that's great. But just bear in mind, keep going, full steam ahead, doing your best in your exams or your coursework, for example. For me, it would have been brilliant because I was a person who would stress a lot about coursework and exams. So it would have been a bit of a weight lifted off my shoulders. But just remember that even if you get an unconditional offer, try as hard as you can in your coursework, in your exams. Your grades do follow you around. Even on my CV now, when I've applied to jobs, I don't just put my degree on there and what I got in my degree. I also put my A levels and my GCSEs on there as well. Another option that you might get is an alternative course offer. So it might be that the competition is really, really high for the course that you've chosen. Perhaps they don't think that you would meet the grades, and they might offer you an alternative course. So just think about that carefully. Is that something that you would be willing to do? Do you need to have a look through something like UCAS Extra, for example, which we'll talk about later? So just sit and think, is that something that I really want? And the other thing that you might get is an unsuccessful. So your offer might be just not didn't quite meet what they thought perhaps was what your grades would be. So it might be that you are unsuccessful in one or two of your offers. But that's why you do get 5 choices. It's to make sure that some offers do come through. Once you get your offers, you can then choose a firm choice. So that's your first choice, and then also an insurance choice. So your insurance choice really has to be somewhere that you'd still be happy to go to if you don't get into your firm choice. You do have some time to think about this. So usually universities will get back to you by the end of March if you've met that January deadline, and then you'll have until sometime in May to make those final choices. So when you do make your firm and when you do make your insurance choice, any other offers that you do have, so maybe you've been really lucky, you've got 5 offers, any other choices that you don't choose are declined and completely disregarded. It's like you never made those choices whatsoever. Once you do make your firm insurance choices, universities will be in touch to confirm it, and it might be that you want accommodation, so then they'll get in touch with you to start making those arrangements.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'm slightly conscious of time, so I'm going to jump us straight into the next part of the schedule, which I think is just talking very quickly about UCAS Extra, which ties very sort of into what Faye's just talked about. So, Dow, can I hand over to you for that?
Yeah, cool. So if you're in, hopefully we want to see all of our students in a position where they've been made 5 offers, whether that be conditional, whether that be unconditional. But should you find yourself in a position where all of your offers are unsuccessful, do not panic. That isn't the end of the world. You can still make one more extra choice through UCAS, and that's through UCAS Extra. And it usually opens end of February, and you usually have up until July to use this service, okay? Only use this if you have used all of your 5 choices, okay? You can't be holding any offers from any university, so that means all of the 5 choices that you've made have to have turned you down. If one university has said, you know what, we'll give you a conditional offer, you wouldn't be able to use UCAS Extra, okay? So make sure you check with universities before adding a UCAS Extra choice. And there's no additional cost if you've already paid that original £25. So it's not going to change anything in regards to how much money you have to pay. You don't need to, or you can't change your personal statement to go through UCAS Extra. And it's a great way for you guys to find out if and why you were unsuccessful.
Thank you very much. We have had a couple of questions come through, particularly for what yourself, Faye, has just talked about. So first of all, very just quickly, it was mentioned about when do you make your firm choice. Obviously, as Faye has just said, your deadline is in May to make those final decisions for your firm choice. Obviously, if you are still making those decisions, or you do end up changing your mind, that's when something like UCAS Extra would come into it. We've had a question surrounding unconditional offers. Does anybody want to very quickly tackle that one whilst we're here?
Yeah, I can tackle that one. It varies uni by uni. So most universities do make unconditional offers, but they're based on the predicted grades you've got, your GCSEs, the quality of the personal statement, the quality of the reference. Essentially, we give out unconditional offers to students that we think have been successful, will continue to be successful, and who we think are a positive fit for our courses. If you do get an unconditional offer, take it as a positive thing, take it as a compliment to the strength of your overall application and academic background. Use it as a part of your process. So if you've got 5 different universities made you offers and 3 of them are unconditional, you've got to work out how important is the unconditional offer to you. Does it make a university suddenly to be the first choice? The benefits are it takes the pressure off the exams, so you've not got to stress about the results. It means you can book your accommodation, knowing exactly where you're going, and it just means you've got a definitive this is where I will be going rather than where this is where I hope to be going. Top tip would be continue to work hard, because you still want to get the best grades you possibly can on your CV. If you don't work hard and your grades aren't that good, they'll sit there staring at you on every application form you write for the next like 50 years. So do continue to work hard, but do you see them as a compliment and something that can take the pressure off and give you much more of a clearer process in working out where you want to go and give you a more definitive and much less variable opportunity.
Thank you very much. We are getting questions come through thick and fast at the minute. One thing I will just say to you guys in the chat, if you are asking questions about maybe some more sort of subject specific questions, we may not get a chance to answer every single subject today, but we'll give you some links at the end of where you can find out a little bit more information about the courses in a little bit more detail, just because we don't want to be sat here for 3 or 4 hours, because that would make a very long live stream.
We do. Come on, we'd love it. Let's do it.
All right, challenge accepted, Jamie.
Sponsorship with the NHS. How long should we live being for?
Yeah, okay. We'll raise some money. We had a question come through from Leah again, who says, what happens if you get no offers? Obviously, we hope that doesn't happen. And as long as you try your best, the university should be getting back to you pretty soon after you've submitted your application. But if you are in the unfortunate situation where you don't get the offers back from the universities that you want, as Dal has mentioned, there is the option for UCAS Extra for you to add an additional offer to another university, or of course there is clearing, which we will talk about very briefly in a moment. So we'll come on to that in a second. I know there's a couple of questions about clearing that have popped up in the chat as well. So what we'll do is we will quickly jump into the next topic, which is myself talking very quickly about results day. So you've submitted your application, you have decided on your 5 choices, then you've decided on your firm choice. You've got through your A-levels, congratulations for the future. And you've got to that point where you are able to pick up your results. Now, depending on when your college opens for you to pick up your results, UCAS might be open a little bit earlier. So you might already know whether you've got into the university that you wanted actually before you actually know what your A-level results are. So UCAS track is available from about 8 o'clock on results day. So you'll be able to actually log in and find out the actual completed result of your university application. You'll be able to see whether you're going where you wanted. So at that stage, then it would be best to go and collect your grades, particularly, and this is for a slightly more negative situation, is if you don't get where you want to go, if you are unfortunately under the requirements to get to the university you want to go to, that is when you would jump straight into clearing, which we are going to talk about in a moment. So it's always worth just making sure that if you check your UCAS application just to see where it's currently sat at, to see where whether you've got the place that you wanted. If you haven't, then obviously you will be able to go and pick up your results, and that's when you'll be able to move into those next steps. A piece of advice that we give to quite a lot of students around results day is try and avoid going on holiday or going somewhere where you won't have access to either the internet or a phone if you need to start making those phone calls for, again, whatever situation that might be. The other flip side of that is you can start ringing your universities to find out a little bit more information. So if you've got your firm choice and you need to confirm some details, you can obviously start ringing the university. We open our phone lines very early, as I know from last year. So you'll be able to pick up the phone, speak to one of us and actually find out a little bit more information. And as I say, that's when we open our clearing offers for you at that stage. The other thing that you can do is if you exceeded your firm offer, you can go through something called adjustment. So that means that you're able to trade up your firm choice for a course that maybe has a slightly higher grade criteria than what you were originally predicted. So if you weren't predicted particularly high grades, maybe you were predicted all Bs and you came out with all As, you can then trade up to a university with a higher grade tariff or a course that's got a slightly higher grade tariff if you were looking to go down that route as well. It gives you enough time to consider those accommodation offers and those different accommodation options, but you've got to bear in mind that obviously quite a lot of the accommodation will be snaffled up quite quickly by those early applications. So make sure you're considering all those factors before you decide to go through these different routes. Quite a lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand straight over to Jamie, who is going to talk a little bit more about how the clearing process works at this stage.
Cheers, Ben. So clearing gets a bit of a bad press. People assume that clearing is something that you don't want to be in. But in reality, clearing can be an opportunity as much as a threat. There's three major types of people that will find themselves using clearing. First of all, thousands of people do use it every year. So it's not like it's a small number. Genuinely, a large volume of people get a place through clearing and go on to have a great university experience. The first pot of people, the one that kind of is traditionally associated with clearing, are people who perhaps don't quite get the grades they wanted. So say you need to get BBB and you get DDD, it's possible that your first and your second choice might both say, really sorry, we can't take you. In that case, you'd then be in clearing, hunting around the many universities that have places to find a place that will fit for the grades that you've got. So it's taking the qualifications you've got, matching them to the grades at different universities advertise at, and going out and getting your place. You have to regroup and rethink quite quick. One of my best mates back in the day at school was predicted really, really high grades and got really low grades. And he had a complete meltdown. He jumped in his car, he wheel spun out the car park, a handbrake turned around the corner, was gone in a cloud of dust for 3 or 4 days. We didn't see him until probably the Tuesday after results day. By that point, lots of the best places had gone. So you have to regroup, rethink, and come back into the market quite quick. Second group of people are people who have perhaps changed their mind. Say you've applied for maths and then you think, oh my God, I hate maths. What am I doing? I want to do French. You can cancel your math choices by getting released and go back in again to apply for French. Or say you change university. Say you're looking around and you want to go somewhere else. Say you suddenly have the realization that DMU is the right choice for you, which would not be a bad idea. Then obviously you can change your mind, release yourself from the university you're at and come to DMU instead. Or thirdly, people who maybe didn't apply to university at all. You might be sat here watching this video, wanting to start this September and not have applied to university yet in the first place. You can use clearing to come in as a late applicant and get a place quite late in cycle, even though you've not applied earlier on. So it's for people who've not got into their ideal choices, people who've changed their mind, or people are coming to the party late as well. There's a huge amount of choice, huge amount of opportunities, and huge amount of support. And we're actually open for clearing from the 1st of June this summer for this September start. So if you're interested in getting a place here at DMU, don't wait until results day. Ring us up in June and we can make you an offer verbally over the phone or on WhatsApp right from the start of the process there. Have your UCAS ID to hand if you're a current student, so you've got it handy, and do some research. Read the university course websites, go onto UCAS, get yourself sussed out with it. The top rule of clearing is the more prepared you are, the more you've thought about it, the more organised you are that you might need it, the less panicked you're going to be, and the more useful and proactive you will find it. If you do your A-levels and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I might not have done as well as I hoped, prepare just in case. Or this year, if you're worried that your predicted grades from your teachers might not be as good as you thought they were going to be, again, think about it from there and put yourself forward. Yeah, and that is the top tips for clearing. Preparation is key, but it's not just a negative thing. It can be a positive thing as well.
Thank you very much, Jamie. Does anybody else have anything they want to add with regards to clearing whilst we're here? Because we did get a couple of questions about that. I think Jamie's quite nicely, succinctly talked a little bit about how it kind of works. Does anybody want to add anything to that?
I'm not very often succinct, but that's good news. Normally I need an hour to myself.
No, I think it's worth knowing that, like I say, thousands of students do go through clearing every single year, and it's good for those students that do decide to change their mind or don't get those sort of firm offers that they wanted. So it is a very, very good solution, and universities will often open their doors for loads and loads and loads of different courses. So if you didn't get where you want to go or you do change your mind, definitely have a look at clearing a little bit closer to the time, and all the details for ours will be on the website. Lovely stuff. Right, last topic before we start to wrap up. So apologies to everyone that we have slightly gone over time. Nikhila, talking about what's next.
Thank you. Okay, so you've either gone through clearing or you've confirmed your first choice or your second choice on your UCAS application. You've made your final university choice and you're ready to go. So the next step, you should receive a welcome and confirmation pack from the university that you are now going to. That'll have some information about their Freshers Week, about accommodation, about events that they've got on throughout the time of Freshers, just so you can see what actually is going to be planned for you. You should also be looking at opening a student bank account. So if you have a look online, there should be a lot of information on things like moneysupermarket.com. They've got quite a good comparison on there about the different student bank accounts that you can open. There's a lot of different benefits to student bank accounts. So some of them will give you an interest-free overdraft. You can have perks with some of them. So I know I personally opened up a Santander bank account because I got a free rail card for 4 years, and that enabled me to have a third off transport whilst I was in university. You also need to start thinking about preparing to move to university. So things like make a list of all the things that you're going to need to buy. So silly things like kitchen stuff. So you're going to need pots, pans, saucepans, plates, everything like that. Things that you probably don't own by yourself at the moment. And maybe start looking into learning how to cook. Maybe now's the time to actually sit your mum down and say, okay, mum, we're at home. I'm going to university in September and I can't live on beans on toast. So please, can you teach me a few meals so that I can actually survive on something other than beans on toast? And yeah, and just be excited really, because at the end of the day, university is such a good experience. It's going to be such an eye-opening experience. It's once in a lifetime opportunity, and just get excited about it really. It can be stressful, it can be scary, but it's a really, really rewarding experience. And just remember that that's what you're there for.
Thank you very much. Some really good advice there. Yeah, definitely learn to cook. Don't rely on pot noodles because they are not good for you. Anybody have any last advice about prepping for university before we start to wrap up?
Yeah, but I think so. I think just make sure it's a personal experience, you know. So to talk to people, talk to teachers, careers advisors, brothers, sisters, parents, boyfriends, girlfriends, but make sure it's your own decision. Own it, because you're there for 3 years and it will lead into the job that you do for the rest of your life. So do make sure. There was a question we had in advance that was talking about, you know, parents trying to take the driver's seat, you know. So let the parent take the passenger seat, let them support you and direct you, but at the same time make sure you're behind the wheel, so you can, you know, you can take their advice where relevant, and you can discreetly, quietly ignore it where you think it isn't relevant as well. Make sure that you own that individual journey. You know, that's why it's called a personal statement, and it's your application to university for your future career and your future life. So do make sure you take that control as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Last couple of questions, just while I think on it. They do tie into personal statements again, because again, I think that's the thing people are most curious about. Do you need to mention GCSE grades or subjects in your personal statement?
They're on the application form. So when you're filling in the form or UCAS form, there'll be a section to put all of your GCSEs in. I would only mention them if you think there's a really specific reason. So if there's something you particularly enjoyed in your maths A level, or a particular experience in your Spanish A level you want to link to, your GCSE, sorry, then you can link to it. But because they're on the form, you probably wouldn't need to talk in detail about GCSE in the statement. No,
absolutely not. Volunteering. So do you have to talk about volunteering in a personal statement? I think we mentioned this briefly in extracurricular.
It's good if you've done it. Then if you've done it, talk about it, at least name check it, because it shows you've got that proactive community-based spirit. And again, you can gain skills from it, but don't feel you have to talk about it if you don't think it's relevant. Depends how much other stuff you've got. I mean, back at the start, Tay mentioned 1 page worth of personal statements. For some people, writing a page is really hard. How do I drag that much information out? For other people, fitting all the stuff they've done on a page is really hard. So it depends what other stuff you've done, and you're just narrowing down to the most relevant, most crucial content. So that would then answer the question individually as to whether or not you think the volunteering has relevant place within the statement. But normally it's worth mentioning if you've done it.
Yeah. And Jamie, just while I've got you as the man in charge, I've got one last question for you, just around, again, the sort of coronavirus affecting UCAS applications.
Yeah.
Just a sort of top level on that.
I mean, we touched on it earlier on. We know that everyone's in a difficult circumstance compared to normal. We know you've missed teaching on your A-levels or your BTEC from the end of March, potentially right through until September, depending what happens in the summer. And we know that you will have missed some exams, you've missed some opportunities for experience. So we're just going to be massively flexible, adaptable, considerate in the process for next year. So when the applications come in, we'll have more flexibility on grades, more flexibility on experience, and not being quite so hung up on particular experience to particular courses. Essentially, we just know the challenging situation you've gone through and will continue to go through, and that flexibility will very much be assumed. You know, here at DMU, we want to get people who want to come to us. We want you to get a place on our course. We'll do everything we can to try and positively process the application and make you an offer and help you join us either this or next September. You know, we're very looking to be embracing of that concept and not letting the situation be a barrier to anything that you guys all aspire to do.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think we're going to leave questions there. Thank you so much to everybody that was chatting with us in the chat and was sending in all your questions. Really sorry if we weren't able to get to your questions. Thank you so much if you also submitted your questions through the booking form on our website. And again, hopefully from the stream today, we were able to answer as many as possible. If we weren't able to answer any of your questions today, there is a chat service that we have on our website that allows you to chat with pretty much everybody here on this stream. I'm just trying to find the link now. There it is. There you go. So if you go to
a whole range of student profiles, there's about 20 different students you can chat to. You can set up one-to-one chat, someone on your course, someone from your area, and lots of staff profiles to have one-to-one conversations there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you do want to have a chat with any of us and find out a little bit more about, obviously, the UCAS application process, or as Jamie's just said, having a chat with a student, do make sure that you go over to that link, because that's going to be a really good link for you to actually chat with somebody. You don't have to do it face-to-face. It's not like a video call or anything like that. It is just literally like your WhatsApp. You can have a chat with somebody and we'll be able to get back to you and find out all that information. So use that link just there. If you are watching our live stream and you enjoyed the live stream, stay tuned for us next week, where we will be doing a student live stream. So we'll be joined by a couple of recent graduates, potentially even Nikita and Taya in the stream today may join us, as well as some current students, where they'll be able to tell you a little bit more about what it's like to be a student at university. So if you do want to get a reminder for that, just go to this link if you're not already on that webpage, and just drop your details below. And again, if you have questions for any of our current students, you can stick that in the box down below as well. So just make sure you fill out that form just there. If you are watching on the Facebook groups, obviously, hello. But if you are actually thinking of applying for either this year or next year, you can actually join those Facebook groups and actually meet and talk to people who will be joining the university at the same time. So what we'll do is at the end of the live stream, I'll pop a link to both of those Facebook groups actually in the comment section. So you'll be able to go through to those groups and actually join them. And again, like I say, meet lots of people that are thinking of applying to us. If you want to find out more about the courses, you can grab yourself a prospectus. Sorry, there's loads of links. Again, I promise I'll put them in the comments. But you can grab yourself a prospectus if you want to find out more about the courses. So again, for those of you that were asking questions about the courses, you can obviously find the links all through there as well. In fact, I think somebody is already popping them into the comments for me right now, which is always really helpful. So yes, if you do want a prospectus, you can head there. And finally, if you have any other questions whatsoever about the application process or your admission or anything like that, drop an email there, because again, the guys at the end of the inquiry line will be able to help you with that.
One final thing, just going back to the COVID-19. Normally, you guys would be attending open days in the summer and the early autumn. It's quite likely that these open days won't be able to happen as normal, and they won't necessarily be able to be on campus, in person visits to university. What we're doing is we're replacing that face-to-face experience with a virtual experience, a blend of people to talk to, multimedia content, virtual campus tours. So keep your eye out for that, because it's going to be in early July, most likely Saturday the 4th, but it's going to be an immersive open day experience, just a digital one rather than face-to-face. We're trying to do everything we can to give you the equivalent experience whilst knowing you can't physically come onto campus and experience it. So keep an eye out for that, Saturday the 4th of July.
Absolutely. But yes, thank you very much to everybody that's watched today. We hope you found it useful. And as I say, if we didn't answer your question, make sure you head over to one of those links that I just provided. And again, they are all in the chat box right now. And we'll hopefully try and get back to you as soon as we can. Stay tuned for next week for our student live chat with some of our student ambassadors. And we'll see you at the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye.